Chapter 41. Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt sprinted through the forest with an icy glint in his eyes as he glared at Donna. You just had to. Didn't you? Of course. I couldn't help myself. They were shouting about looking for a pair of ugly girls with a guy. My tongue just slipped. Donna moaned as her brows lowered into a frown, as her cheeks reddened. Stop arguing, you two. Beans coughed as she cut into their argument while attempting to catch her breath. We still have to lose them. I don't think there's much hope of that happening now. Colt said, as he fixed his glare on Donna again. The trio surged onwards with heavy feet as the members of Kaleidoscope attempted to catch up to them. Their rasping voices yelled at Colt's group for them to stop and face them, but Colt just snorted in reply. You want me to stand still and wait for death? Dream on. A tree to their right side threw splinters everywhere as the enemy struck it with a spell. Colt cursed under his breath as his eyes darted to the hole that was created as they passed by. Colt inhaled sharply as he wondered how much damage that spell could have done if it had hit one of them. Colt stomped the ground and came to a halt as he raised his shield. In the next moment, a golden arrow slammed into it. The force behind the projectile made his arm feel numb, but something else caught his attention. 0.4 HP, the women heard air being inhaled sharply as Colt spun on his heels to chase after them. Donna frowned when she saw the grim expression upon Exile's face. It told her everything that she needed to know about their pursuers. After all, he had shrugged off tens of attacks from the Lost Souls as if they were nothing. For Exile to appear concerned about receiving a single attack, well, that meant that they were in deep water. Donna's face cramped as she pushed herself to run at her full speed. Since it had come to this, it was definitely better to leave Exile behind and escape with Beans. Come on. Donna made a point of staring in Beans' direction as she dealt with the lump in her throat. Beans bit her lower lip as she glanced between Exile and Donna. Her moment of hesitation caused Colt to clench his fists as he waited for her decision. I'm sorry. Beans' lips trembled before she ran off to catch up with Donna. Colt gritted his teeth as his eyes squinted at their departing backs. They had left him behind to face Kaleidoscope on his own. Colt clenched his shield tightly as he glanced around for anything that could help him. However, to his dismay, there was nothing that looked promising. Colt turned red in the face as he slowly accepted that there was no way out of this situation for him. The best he could do was attempt to take as many of them with him as he could. However, he failed to notice that he had just misplaced his footing. His boot connected with a rock and sent him tumbling to the ground. Colt groaned as he hit his head, then felt a stinging pain on his arm. Frustrated voices entered his hearing from somewhere above and his heart felt like it was beating non-stop. His palms were sweaty as he tried to get his bearings. It appeared as though he had fallen down a hidden slope because of the way the layout of the land was. Colt's eyes bulged out of his head as he realized it had given him the best chance that he was ever going to get. He panted heavily as he crawled through the dirt to conceal himself between several large boulders. If luck was on his side, then Kaleidoscope would pass right by without knowing what had happened. Over here. Wait. Where did he go? You didn't lose him, did you? Damn it. Go after the girls. He might have used a spell to catch up with them. A sharp sensation of pain rushed through Colt's palm from clenching the rock in front of him too tightly. He finally allowed himself to heave a sigh of relief as the muffled shouting quickly moved away from his position. I guess they're the girls' problem now. Colt felt his veins popping out on his face as he thought about them. They better hope I don't run into them again. I swear I'll hack them to pieces. He waited for a few minutes just to be safe before he hobbled out into the open. Colt clambered up the slope, using the rocks jutting out of the ground for support. He glanced around at the now empty forest surrounding him. Valheim should be in that direction. Colt had found out the direction by reviewing the path they had taken and comparing it with his memories of his view from on the mountain. He felt like he was on cloud nine when he realized that there should no longer be any obstacles between him and his goal. There's just one more thing to take care of. Colt called up the party interface in his mind. With a broad grin on his face, he selected the option to leave the party. After confirming his selection, he set off at top speed through the forest. I wish I could be there to see the look on their faces when Kaleidoscope catches up to them. Colt snorted before laughing merrily. They should be able to keep them busy for a while. I'll need to lie low once I turn this quest in. But where would I go? Colt's mind wandered to several issues that he would have to take care of. For example, finding reliable party members and a safe place to rest. A frown crossed his face as he wondered if he should check in with Anya. Maybe he could ask her to offer some useful items. That was what followers were for, right? Chapter 42. Fit for a God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The first thing Colt did when he returned to Valheim was head over to the temple. He felt uneasy with his DP not being full, so this was the first thing that he had to take care of. When he reached the street where the temple was situated, he noticed a crowd gathered in a line to enter. There were only around 20 players, but it was still more than he had seen earlier around the city. He joined the rear of the line quietly and tried to keep a low profile. However, there were 3 groups standing across the road eyeing those waiting to enter the temple. From time to time, one player from each group would shout out a recruitment notice. Each group was trying to form a party. One group was recruiting people to hunt wolves. The competition for those mobs had drastically increased since people had left the city. With PKs happening all over the place, it was better to be in a large group now. The second group wanted to go further and explore the mountains where Colt had just come from. So he already knew that they would not find much unless they went further afield. Of course, there could have been something worth hunting up there that he simply had not come across. The third group remained silent about what they were up to. However, they required level 3 players. Colt observed the group as he attempted to listen in on their conversation. Are all 5 of them level 3? Colt frowned as he realized the gap between himself and others was not large at all. Of course, that would make sense if these guys had killed other players for their divinity. But how many did they have to kill to reach this level? Colt even wondered if it was a scam. It was common in some games where a group would hire one outsider, and then kill them when they were out of sight of other players for their valuables. Colt sighed as she shifted forward. The line was dwindling, as most players had completed their tasks. As Colt entered the temple, he felt as though a few pairs of eyes were staring at his back. He pretended not to notice as he headed for one of the empty pedestals and a statue of himself appeared on it. Connecting with prayers in the mortal realm. You currently have 18 stored prayers. Please adjust how many you would like to absorb. HP equals 0 to 4, DP equals 0 to 3, Colt groaned as he spent 7 prayers on fully recovering. However, the interface gave him a pleasant surprise next. 20 gold coins are stored in your shrines. Do you wish to accept them? Naturally, Colt agreed and felt somewhat happier to see his wealth inflate to 30 gold. However, there were no quests stored in his shrine, so he exited the interface and left the temple. Once he was outside, he slowly made his way to Jarkso's store. Now and then, he would pause as though he were interested in the building next to him. This was so that he could watch for anyone tailing him, as they would most likely stop as well. Nothing seemed out of place as he reached the shop, and even the street was empty, which made him feel better. Colt quickly slipped inside before anyone could spot him to discover Jarkso's apparition standing behind the counter, waiting for him. You've finally returned. Good. Jarksos grinned broadly as he stared at Colt. Here's what you asked for. Colt frowned as he headed to the counter and started the trade. Excellent. Though, I thought there would be more than this. Jarkso's eyes were bulging out of his head as he studied the items. It's all that I could get from the tomb. There were others with me, but I don't know what they received. They might drop by to sell a few things later on. Colt shrugged, as if it were no big deal. I see. Jarxos had a glint in his eyes as he stared at Colt, but he did not press any further on the matter. Here's your reward then. The Tomb of Olivia quest highlighted itself as being completed and Colt received 5 new stat points. This would go a long way towards reaching level 4, but he would wait until he finished his business with Jarxos before allocating them. Since you went to great lengths to get these items for me, I think it's only appropriate if you choose one for yourself. Jarxos nodded his head with a slight smirk as he placed 3 items on the counter. Choose whichever one you like. Colt rubbed his hands together as he cast a critical eye over them. The first item was a fresh pair of boots. Does that mean if I equip them, then the rest of me will be naked? My current boots are part of a set. It's not like I can separate them. Colt frowned as he wondered about the viability of this choice. Of course, he could always store them until he had enough clothing. But that could take a while. It was better if he aimed for more immediate effects. The second item was a ring with no special effects attached. However, it seemed to have some value. Colt guessed that this was a choice for those who wanted to make extra money. And finally, there was a brand new axe. It came with a +2 to authority and it would base even its attack damage off of that stat instead of strength. The handle had golden runes running along its shaft, but apart from that, it looked quite ordinary. Colt did not even hesitate to choose the axe. Compared to the other 2 items, it was clearly a better fit for him right now. You have received Common Divine Scardian Axe, Common Divine Scardian Axe, +2 authority, description. An axe forged by divinity. An excellent weapon for a new god who relies on their authority even in melee battles. Chapter 43. New Friends. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt immediately equipped his new axe and sunk 2 of his points into speed, 1 into endurance and the remaining 2 into authority. He could not help but grin broadly as he looked at his stats. Name. Exile, title. God of the Hearth, race. Local deity, human, tier 0, level 3, HP, 60/60ths, 45 + 15, DP. 10 out of 10, 8 + 2, strength. 5, endurance. 12, 9 + 3, speed. 6, authority. 10, 8 + 2, the 2 points of authority on his new axe also artificially increased his max DP. Colt's face lit up when he saw the overall effects. He now had 2 different stats that were essentially in the double digits. Plus, he was now only 2 stat points away from reaching level 4. Authority increase detected. Please choose 2 of the following spells. Colt had a glint in his eyes as he waited for the next notification. He wondered how many other players had figured out how important the authority stat was. Divine, Minor Sunder. Strike your target with a ranged beam of concentrated divinity for 40% of target's health. Requires a higher authority level than your target. Cost. 5 DP, Divine, Minor Divine Arrow. Fast-moving Golden Arrow. Damage and cost equal to user's authority up to 10 maximum. Hearth, Raging Hearth. Creates a divine fire that radiates a healing aura over 20 m. Heals followers/party members for 5 HP per second for 4 seconds. Enemies will suffer from a 20% suppression to all stats within this zone. Cost. For DP, Colt's eyes sparkled as he read the descriptions. Minor Divine Arrow was nothing new to him by this point, but the other 2 were far more appealing. Minor Sunder was a gamble, since its damage would depend on the opponent's health. However, it had a fixed cost was far better than Minor Divine Arrow in Colt's eyes. By choosing Minor Sunder, Colt felt much happier knowing that he would have another offensive option. So far he had felt like a meat shield that was only superb at taking damage. Raging Hearth was another good spell. Although it was another defensive-orientated spell, it, at least came with a debuff against any opponents. Colt felt as though his character was finally coming into its own. At Tier 1 I should gain more offensive options because of my element. If I had to guess, then Earth should be a defensive element. Fire should be an assault type. While air and water are probably hybrids. Colt nodded as he thought about that. He felt that his analysis made sense based on what he knew from other games. With that, he ignored the minor divine arrow once again and chose the remaining 2 spells. He felt the usual knowledge of how to activate these spells enter his mind. With a broad grin, he turned to Jarxos. Now that he had merged his gains, it was time to sell his old equipment. Colt frowned as he felt Jarxos was being stingy. He only gained 2 gold for his shield and 3 gold for his old axe. Still, he could not complain since he had nothing else to compare Jarxos' prices to. Come back soon. I'll sort through these items and put them on display. You never know what you might find. Jarxos flashed a cocky smile at Colt as he watched the latter leave his store. There were no nasty surprises waiting for him this time when he left the shop. However, now he had no plans for what to do next. Should I search the city for a place to rest? Or maybe I can find somewhere outside of the walls. Colt frowned as he struggled with his decision. Valheim was massive after all, and it would take a considerable amount of time to find anything in it. Forget it. I'm better off hunting wolves while looking for a safe place. Colt set off for the city gates once again. Valheim had become slightly lively in this area because of the players coming and going to the wolf fields. Colt eyed them warily as he wondered how many of them might feel the temptation to kill him. However, as far as he knew, nobody had tried anything in the city yet. This made him feel somewhat safe as he moved along the various streets. I got here faster than before. Colt thought as he stared at the giant gates before him. I guess I'll have to invest in speed more if I want to do a lot of exploring. That seemed like a certainty as he thought about having to track down the other first flame fragments. He had a suspicious feeling that they might not even be in his subrace sphere of influence. It would make far more sense for them to be scattered throughout the entire human divine realm. You were at the temple earlier. Some man's rough-sounding voice called out to Colt from the side as he passed through the gates. You seem strong. Why didn't you reply to our recruitment? Colt's head swiveled to size up the owner of the voice. The man sported a hairstyle that was down to the skin at the sides, while he had pulled the top portion back into a braided ponytail. Strangely enough, his avatar was clean-shaven. Usually when gamers went for this kind of style they always had some kind of beard. Why would I? Colt shrugged as he eyed the group from the temple earlier. There were no details to judge whether there was anything beneficial to me. Besides, what makes you think I even meet your standards? The man chuckled as he looked at Colt. Oh, you meet the standards, all right. My divinity tells me you're level 3. As for the details, well, it wasn't something that we could just shout out without drawing some unwanted attention. I'm sure you understand what I mean. Colt nodded silently as he stared at the group. None of their body languages declared they had any malicious intentions, which made him raise an eyebrow. So, what do you want with me, then? Let us head somewhere quiet in the city to have a chat about it. The man grinned as he gestured towards Valheim. Chapter 44. The Raider's Horn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt kept silent as he followed the group back into Valheim. He kept a slight distance from them, so that he could watch for any unusual movements. I'm Clay. Short for Claymore. The man who had approached him glanced over his shoulder at Colt. Ednel.co, exile. Colt wore a blank expression as he met Clay's gaze. Exile, huh? Clay's eyes narrowed as he hummed. Don't think I've heard of you before. No matter. We're bound to meet new people, right? The group chuckled as they monitored the players that they passed. They did not appear to be on edge, but it seemed to Colt that they were watching for something or someone. Soon, Clay turned down a nearby alley. Colt had never been here before, so he glanced at the doors that they passed with a raised eyebrow. They barely crossed 20 meters before Clay stopped. He raised a meaty fist and banged on the wooden door next to him. There was a creaking noise as the door parted with its frame, leaving a gap that was just wide enough for them to pass through. Colt's eyes widened as he looked at the interior. It's a bar. Welcome to the Raiders' Horn. Clay glanced at Colt. Jorgen runs this place. Claims he used to be the god of revelry or something like that. How did you even find this place? Colt's cheek twitched as he looked at Clay in a new light. Funny thing that. Just stumbled on in as I was looking around. Clay scratched his cheek as his face turned red. Anyway, here's the kicker, and why we need you. Jorgen gave me a quest that requires a party. If we complete it, this place will open to the public. Colt frowned as he listened to that. It sounded somewhat familiar to what he had gone through with Jarxos. He probably has a hidden reward then. Colt squinted at Clay, which made the latter laugh. Yeah, I know. Sounds suspicious, right? Well, I've got nothing to hide. We'll each gain +5 stat points and I get a special horn that can give a buff to my allies. Clay's grin was broad as he looked at Colt's dumbfounded expression. What? Did you think I would hide it? Of course. Colt nodded as he glanced at the others. You seem to be aware of the game situation. So revealing a rare item like that to everyone puts you in danger. What? These guys. Clay waved his hand at the others. We've played together for years. Recently, one of our group quit just before we joined this game. It's a real shame. He would have loved this. There was a resounding sigh as everyone but Colt hung their heads. So that's why you need me. Or to be more exact, it's why you need a new party member. Don't say it like that. You're definitely the one we need. Clay eyed Colt before he continued. You're the guy that Kaleidoscope is after, right? Rumor has it they think you discovered a tomb. But if you're here, that means there's a chance you succeeded and escaped their ambush. Colt realized where this was going. Clay had obviously heard about him entering the shop and his subsequent fallout with Kaleidoscope. It did not take a genius to figure out that he might have some valuable information or item. Especially when you took into consideration Kaleidoscope mobilizing their team to hunt him down. So, you're thinking that your quest might lead you to something that I may have already dealt with. Colt remained vague about his answer. Making sure that he did not confirm or deny anything. Right you are. The information that you may have could prove more useful than anything that you have on you. All we're asking is for you to join us as a temporary party member. If it is somewhere similar to anything that you have been to, and you provide useful information, we'll give you a split of everything the rest of us get besides the horn. Colt thought about Clay's offer and felt that it was a good one. There was still some risk involved in his end. But the stat points he could gain were worth it. He made a show of pretending to consider it for longer than what he had. The cheeks of Clay and the other guys twitched as their smiles became strained. You've got a deal. Colt stared at Clay while acting as if it was a hard bargain. However, as long as I'm with you guys then you have to help if we have any trouble with Kaleidoscope. That's not a problem. Clay waved his hand as though he were shooing away something trivial. None of us like Kaleidoscope anyway. So it's no skin off our noses. Colt smiled when he heard that. It seems like these guys could be reliable. Colt nodded to himself as he glanced around at this group. When do we leave? Clay chuckled as he slapped the table next to him. Oh, you're eager all right. Good. We're ready to go but it's best if we leave in 2 groups of 3. That way we won't draw too much attention. If everything works out and you decide to stick around with us, well, maybe we can form an official guild. You mean Pantheon boss? One of the other guys chuckled as he corrected Clay. Sorry, we can form a pantheon. Clay shrugged his shoulders as he noticed Colt's wide eyes. I'm still getting used to this game's terminology. You guys know how to form a guild? Colt stared at Clay's red face in disbelief. How? Don't you know? I thought everybody did. It was one of the first things discovered by the first batch to arrive here. Chapter 45. Bad Neighbor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A slight breeze ran through the bar as Colt listened to Clay's explanation. He struggled to believe the easiness of forming a guild in the game. According to Clay, there was a tablet towards the rear of the temple. This item held the interface to register an official guild that the game system would recognize. Pantheons, huh? Colt's eyebrows dipped into a frown at how easily Clay had shared the information. Either the girls did not know, or they kept it from me. But what's the point of trying to hide this from me? Since it's common knowledge, anyway. Colt fidgeted as he stared at Clay. I doubt he's lying. If it were important information, he could have charged me something for it. Exile. Hey, Exile. Snap out of it. Clay said before chuckling and fixing him with a strange look. Sorry. You just caught me by surprise. Colt's eyes narrowed as he realized everyone was looking at him. No worries. Anyway, this fellow with the bald head is Moist Burrito. Everyone calls him Burry. The nasty-looking one is Old Un. But Un is fine. This is Dessa, and last but not least, I am Legend. He prefers to be called Leggy. Clay said as he pointed a thumb towards a wiry guy with a short crew cut at the end of his speech. No, I do not. Leggy snarled. Call me Legend. Raucous laughter resounded in the bar as a bunch of toothy grins aimed themselves at Leggy. Colt understood it was an inside joke that he should play along with. Although this only held true if he wanted a good relationship with this group. Don't worry, Leggy. I understand. Colt walked over and placed a hand on Leggy's shoulder as he closed his eyes and nodded. Leggy's face turned bright red as he clenched his fists, but the others burst out in a fresh wave of laughter. Colt grinned broadly at Leggy, who looked confused. It seemed like the laughter had defused the situation as Leggy accepted his fate. Okay, since we agree, let's party up and head out. Clay sent a party request to Colt, which the latter accepted. Exile, you're with me in Dessa. Burry, Leggy and Un. You guys know what to do. There was a chorus of agreement before Clay headed to the door. Colt nodded to the three who would remain behind for a few minutes before following Clay and Dessa. None of them said anything to each other as they made their way towards Valheim's gate. A few players spared them a glance in passing, but nobody seemed interested in what they were up to. Colt kept at a steady pace as he walked slightly behind Clay. He did not feel anxious at all, since if they were going to another tomb he knew what to expect. Colt guessed that the others probably felt some hesitation. But he did not want to put them at ease just yet. It was far better for him if they remained on alert. That way, Kaleidoscope would have a hard time monitoring him if they had returned to the city. As Colt was wondering how far they would have to travel, he received a system prompt that made him raise an eyebrow. Why is she calling now? Your oracle, Anya Iraldson, is trying to connect with you. Do you accept? Colt accepted the request and waited for the static sound to fill his mind. Lord Exile. Yes, Anya. Why are you contacting me? Colt's frown deepened as he paid attention to her words. The oracle connection made it difficult to hear Anya's tone, so he could not tell if anything was wrong. I apologize for interrupting you. It's just that. I think we may need you. Hesitation appeared in Colt's footsteps as he missed a beat. This drew Dessa's attention to him, but he said nothing when he noticed Colt's expression. Tell me what's going on. Colt did his best to conceal any anxiety in his tone as he spoke through the mind link. Some warriors came over from Corden asking some questions. They're insisting that the people of Iraldsven should start worshipping a goddess called Donna the Great. Colt's eyes widened when he heard that. That woman started so close to me. Is this on purpose or is it her followers taking initiative? Colt was full of questions as he wondered how he could discover the information that he needed. Is there oracle with them? Colt asked, as he refocused on the mind link. Ha! You mean Donna the Great is an actual goddess? Colt cursed under his breath as he remembered his followers only experienced brief contact with one other god so far. There was no telling how they would react to one that was supported by a larger settlement. She is. However, we are not on good terms. Has anyone given my name to these visitors? Yes. Bjorn called them a few choice profanities before we could calm him down, so, they've already left and will soon report this to the people of Corden. Colt let out a sigh as he realized he was going to have to settle things with Donna pretty soon. She was too much of a threat if her foundation in the mortal realms was right next door to his own. No. They're still here. I invited them to have dinner with us as an apology for Bjorn's behavior. They're going to receive shelter here for the night and return to Corden in the morning. Good. Try to stall them as long as possible. I'll come down to deal with it as soon as I can. Colt clenched his fists as he wondered what he could even do. The best scenario he could think of was performing a minor miracle that killed the group of outsiders without implicating Anya or Iraldsven. Sorry to trouble you. I'll await your arrival. Colt heaved a sigh as Anya cut off their connection. Hopefully, we can get through this quest quickly. Donna should be no match for me personally, but it's a different matter if she sends her followers to deal with mine. Chapter 46. Sacrifice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What did he say? Bjorn looked at Anya with a fervent gaze. Anya turned away from the altar dedicated to exile and cast her eyes over his believers. It seems these people from Corden are problematic. Their goddess is a thorn in Exile's side. There was a chorus of grumbling amongst Exile's followers who gathered in the temple. They discussed the meaning of these words amongst themselves while glancing at Anya from time to time. The atmosphere became solemn as they wondered what they should do. Lord Exile has asked us to stall them for as long as possible. He's taking care of things in the heavens right now, but he has declared that he will descend to take care of it soon. Anya heaved a sigh as she worried about the impression that they were making on their god. No. Bjorn's face turned red as he clenched the back of a chair. How can we trouble Exile with mere mortals? Are we not capable of dealing with this ourselves? Some mutters of agreement followed Bjorn's statement, as many eyes fell on him. The other villagers felt he had a point. It was disgraceful if they always ran to Exile to have him deal with their issues. Should they not be spreading his name like those from Corden were doing? Lord Exile has already declared his intentions. If he feels this is urgent enough to descend the moment he is available, then he will kill them. The gods are unfathomable. They have far too much to be concerned about already. Bjorn took a deep breath as he glanced at his fellow believers. Let us prove ourselves worthy of Exile's blessings. I say we kill these guests before Exile has to intervene. Yeah. Many followers let out in unison. Grab your axes. Sharpen your wits. Exile has spoken and we shall not disappoint him. Bjorn's eyes were wide as grabbed his axe from his waist and hoisted it overhead. Yelling sounded in the temple as the people rushed out to fetch their weapons. Bjorn let out a broad grin before he felt a hand upon his shoulder. What are you doing? Anya bit her lower lip as she trembled. Lord Exile said that he would take care of this. Anya, dear girl. You're still young and ignorant of the way of the gods. Bjorn shook his head as he met Anya's gaze. How much of the book have you read now? I've read about Olivia stealing the first flame from the Elden and gifting fire to King Haskard. Anya's brows dipped into a frown as she wondered where this was going. Right. Scardia was a much colder place back then. Many of us died in the frigid ice-strewn lands. If it were not for the goddess Olivia robbing the Elden of their treasure, our people may not have lived on till this day. Bjorn patted Anya's shoulders as he met her gaze with a glint in his eyes. After the Elden discovered what Olivia had done, they launched a war against all humans. Olivia did what she had to for us. I'm certain Lord Exile will do the same. So we have to be prepared to do what we must for him, even if it leads to war. Anya hung her head as she thought about the people of Iraldsfen. If they went through with this, how many of them would see the next harvest? Anya, there is always war. With or without the gods watching over us. At least this way we're serving their will. Don't dwell on it too much. Besides, don't you think it will please Exile to discover he has one less thing to take care of? Anya was hesitant as she nodded her head to Bjorn's wisdom. I can't question him. He knows the gods better than anyone else in the village. And father still has not returned from the raids. Anya heaved a sigh of relief to have such a reliable advisor. For Exile. Anya said in a low voice as she walked towards the temple's entrance. Bjorn had a warm smile on his face as he followed behind her. That's right, Anya. This is the Scardian way. Of course our gods would approve of this. One day, you may have to lead armies on behalf of Exile. It's best if you learn these things sooner rather than later. As the pair walked down the paths of Iraldsfen towards the guest house, villagers exited their homes with weapons in hand. There was no need for so many of them. Only 6 men had come from Cordon. But none of them would leave alive. The crowd was silent as they approached the building, their torchlight flickered off their naked steel. Anya could see an iciness in the eyes of Exile's followers as Bjorn opened the door. There was a brief creak from the wood, which startled one man inside. Who's there? The man's eyes went wide as he saw the murderous mob coming through the doorway, one by one. Bjorn pounced towards the man while swinging his axe. There was a brief scream before Bjorn buried the weapon in the man's skull. Anya could hear clamoring from the rooms that led off from the entrance. This man was a guard. They don't trust us. Realizing that the enemies had discovered their intentions, the followers of Exile roared as they brazenly spread throughout the building. Anya could hear screams and the clanging of metal for a short time before the guest house became silent. She had remained in the entrance hall while Bjorn led the assault. The latter appeared from one doorway, covered in blood. Lord Exile is the god of the hearth. Let us burn their bodies and offer their souls to him as a sacrifice. I am confident that this will please him. Bjorn wore a solemn look, but there was a sparkle to his eyes that unnerved Anya. Chapter 47. Not the same. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Exile stared at the cave's entrance with a frown. So far, this place had no resemblance to Olivia's tomb. Clay was staring at him with an expectant expression. But Exile had nothing to say. How could he, when they had not even confirmed if they would face similar enemies yet? Right, let's have a look, shall we? Clay rubbed his hands together before drawing his broadsword. You go first. Old nodded in response before creeping forward. He gripped his bow tightly as he took the lead. Exile waited outside with the others for a few minutes before they followed him inside. Exile could hear water dripping as his boots scuffed across the ground. The sounds echoed off the walls, making it appear as if the cave went on forever. Exile was paying close attention to the rocky walls packed with dirt. His experience at Olivia's tomb made him wary of an ambush. The group pushed further into the cave, but nothing happened. They had still not caught sight of yet, which was a good sign, according to Clay. As the darkness of the cave stole their sight from them, Exile picked up on a soft indigo glow further ahead. Seems like we're about to reach the true start. Exile did not feel the need to say anything just yet. It was better not to confirm that he already had experience with this sort of thing, even if the others already believed that he did. There's Why is he just standing there? Clay raised an eyebrow as he spotted his comrade crouched against the wall of the cave, while looking around a bend. When Un heard them approaching, he raised a finger to his lips in a gesture for them to be quiet. Exile gripped his shield and tightly as his right hand hovered over the shaft of his sheathed axe. The entire party lowered into crouches of their own as they shuffled up next to Un. What is that? Clay's voice was hard to hear as they all studied the sight before them. Exile's eyes went wide as he recognized the sea of mobs. They were definitely lost souls. However, there was a difference. Each one of them was wearing armor and wielded a weapon. They stood in organized ranks before a giant indigo door. They're lost souls. Exile decided it was time to share something. Their attacks based their damage on authority. Or at least, they did. What do you mean? Clay's eyes narrowed as he looked to Exile. I've come across them before. But they had no equipment. So I can't say for sure they're still authority-based mobs. Exile shrugged his shoulders to show that he had nothing else to offer. Boss, if they're authority-based, neither me nor Dessa will last long if they attack us. Bori glanced at the mobs dubiously. Clay hummed as he considered their options. Turning back without giving the tomb a go was out of the question. Bombarding the enemies from a distance would be the best plan. However, Clay raised an eyebrow as he glanced at Exile. What would you suggest? The sudden question took Exile by surprise, and the rest of the party frowned at Clay in response to his question. Exile rubbed his chin as he considered the scenario. When I came across them before, it was impossible to retreat. The only way to survive was to push forward. However, there were only 2 other people with me. This time, there's 6 of us. But our opponent's strength is unknown. Comparing them to what I've been through could lead to vital mistakes. The party nodded at his explanation and felt reassured that he did not just advise them to rush in head first. However, it still left Clay with a problem. Exile's description of what he went through poked a hole in his plan. If the scenarios were similar enough, then just sitting back and attacking from range would eventually get them killed. However, if they were different, then rushing for the door could lead to that fate instead. 10 minutes later, Clay had finally reached a decision. We'll form a square formation and move forward. Un and Dessa will be in the center. You 2 can focus on ranged attacks until we confirm their damage type. Exile and I will take the front-facing corners. Bori and Leggy, you guys have the rear. Let's go. There was some apprehension in the air as they took their designated positions. Bori was the most disgruntled since he felt that he should have been in the center instead of Un. However, Clay had put Un in that position instead because he was capable of ranged attacks. Whereas Bori had none. It would have been unfair to the other members to allow Bori to take cover and not provide any help. Although he would face more danger this way, it would spread the burden more evenly amongst everyone. They moved forward as one, and the rear lines of the lost souls reacted to their presence. Their heads turned to face the intruders before they turned mechanically and stamped their feet at the same time. They gave Exile the impression of being a well-trained army that was on parade. This doesn't look good. Exile's palms were sweaty as his eyes shifted from one mob to another in rapid succession. He could have sworn that he could hear the others' hearts pounding as they struggled to control their breathing. No sudden charge occurred. The lost souls marched in unison to cover the distance between them. The delay was agonizing as the gap between them lessened at a slow pace. Exile felt the need to charge forward recklessly. But that would leave the others undefended at his end. They were so close now. Close enough to see the whites of their eyes. If they had any. Exile unsheathed his axe. When it was firmly in his grip, the golden runes on its shaft lit up. He banged the blade against his shield. As if challenging the lost souls. Chapter 48. Unleash everything. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Clang. Exile grimaced as a spear bounced off of his shield. A system notification had distracted him, and the attack almost slipped past his defense. Milestone. Followers 25/25 reached. You have received +1 stat point, new milestone. Followers 32/50. What the hell is going on in Iraldsven? Of course it elated Exile to gain an extra stat point. However, his followers had not increased since his ascension. Something must have happened. Exile threw the strange occurrence to the back of his mind for now. He retaliated against the offending lost soul with a shield bash, followed by a swift hack of his axe. You have dealt 0.4 damage, you have dealt 0.1 damage, Exile frowned as the damage report came in. Lost warrior, weakened, Exile's mind raced to make sense of the information. So they're a subtype of the lost souls. It took several more exchanges with the mob before Exile could finally dispatch it. He heaved a sigh of relief before blocking a sword that came swinging towards his head. Exile groaned, but not from the blow he had just deflected. The cause was a spear that was aimed at his ribs as he raised his shield. 0.3 HP, the spear that had struck had run a speed check against him. The mob's speed was higher than his own, which resulted in him taking damage. Damn, they're totally different. Their weapons target different stats. I can only rely on my endurance if I block with the shield. When Exile glanced at the rest of the party, he saw expressions of dismay as they struggled to deal with the mounting pressure. This isn't going well. Some of the lost warriors bore shields which they used to prevent the party from brute-forcing their way through. Exile grit his teeth before using Heathfire and Raging Hearth together. Clay turned to stare at him with wide eyes as the auras washed over the party. Kill them. We have little time. Exile raised his voice so that everyone could hear him. Everyone's expressions became solemn when they realized Exile was giving them a warning. In the 4 seconds that Raging Hearth lasted for, everyone recovered to full health and cut down at least 2 mobs each. This achievement would have been impossible without the zone debuff, since it indirectly increased the damage that they could deal out. Luckily, Heathfire was still providing everyone with +2 points to their endurance. The slight boost to their maximum health and being able to shrug off some blows that they could not before made them appreciate Exile's presence. Clay activated one of his spells, which increased everyone's speed by +2. This seemed to be some kind of signal, as everyone else unleashed one spell after another. Although Exile did not know about their effects, he could see the damage that they wrought for himself. Screw it. If this place is like the other tomb, then we'll recover once we clear this area. Exile grit his teeth as he pointed his axe at the crowd before him. A blast of heat washed over the party as golden flames erupted from Exile's axe in a never-ending stream. He had activated Cleansing Flame, turning himself into a mobile flamethrower. Clay stared at him with wide eyes as he gulped. How? Colt forced his way through the crowd. Every mob that came into contact with the flames turned into motes of light within 5 seconds, only if their authority was less than Exile's. Lost Soul, weakened. 134/200.org. These lost warriors counted towards the same milestone as the lost souls. In that one attack that drained his DP to 0, Exile annihilated 30 enemies. Damn. This might have been better to use from the start. Exile grinned like a madman as he heard the others moving to fill the gap that he had created. The mobs that had become isolated due to surviving the flames got cut down in short order. The others launched a few more divine spells and specialty ones until they also ran their DP dry. It was then that the damage they received piled up. Exile frowned as his HP hit 32/60. Out of everyone in the group, he was certain that he possessed the highest max HP. He focused on sensing the others and inhaled sharply. Clay was hovering around 30%, while Buri only had roughly 5% of his HP left. The others were at various points between the pair. Even Un and Dessa in the center had fallen prey to enemy arrows that soared over the heads of those defending them. The mob soon created a wall of bodies around their formation again, slowing their pace to a crawl. Within moments of the fresh surge of pressure, the first casualty appeared. Buri disappeared between motes of light as his health bottomed out. No. Buri. Leggy's face turned red as he hacked wildly at the mobs who had killed his friend. Leggy even resorted to kicking them, to force their bodies back a few steps. Then he saw it. Buri's divine orb sat still at his feet. Leggy scooped it up before retreating to his place in the formation. Dessa filled the empty spot, leaving Un alone in the center. Exile frowned as he glanced at Leggy. Buri's orb vanished from his hand. But not in the usual motes of light after being absorbed. So, I can store divine orbs for later use. That's good to know. I guess this means you have a chance of recovering your lost stats if a friend picks your orb up. This meant that guild wars in the game would be great opportunities for rapid development. However, even one guild war held the potential to ruin the loser forever. Exile wondered how such an event would look like in Pantheon. He could already picture it being chaotic beyond belief. Clang! A sword bounced off of Exile's shield as he cut the mob down with his axe. What the? When did we reach the door? Chapter 49. In the Walls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Unget the door. Everyone else, cover him. Clay's voice carried over the sounds of their battle. Exile cursed as he spun to meet the mobs, pressing their group from the rear. Everyone closed in to prevent any blind spots as they deflected any attacks aimed at Old Un. As the indigo door turned transparent, there was a shout to Exile's left. When he glanced over in that direction, he witnessed Dessa disappearing amongst motes of light. That's 2 down already. Exile grit his teeth as 2 hammers struck his shield. This is not looking good. There's only 4 of us left and we have not even set foot inside the tomb yet. He did not see who picked up Dessa's orb. But he was certain that someone would have. They carefully backed up until they passed through the now transparent, indigo barrier. Exile stared at the lost souls to see if they could follow them. Luckily, that did not appear to be the case. They pounded on the barrier with heavy blows. All to no avail. Clay heaved a sigh of relief from somewhere behind Exile when he saw that they were safe. Damn. Buri and Dessa. If only they lasted a little longer. Clay kicked the wall of the passage as his fist trembled. His eyes rounded on Exile, who was still staring at the mobs. So, you've definitely been inside a tomb then. Exile sighed as he heard the question. You could say that, but it was totally different. I have no idea what this tomb has in store for us. We should be prepared for anything. Don't just rely on my past experiences. Care to share them with us? So we at least have an idea of what to expect. Clay raised an eyebrow as he stared at Exile. Egnell.co Exile thought about it for a moment. He rubbed his chin as he considered how much he should tell them. I should just tell them what they need to know for now. Clay probably already knows that I gained a special reward. But just because he was willing to share what he will get, that does not mean that I have to do the same. Exile took his time and explained the trials that he had experienced before. The others were dubious expressions as they listened to his story. It took Exile roughly 30 minutes to go through it from start to finish. Naturally, he excluded the information he gained from Olivia. So, what you're saying is, we're screwed. Clay shook his head as he wondered if he had let his greed get the better of him. Not necessarily. The trials from here on out should return us to peak condition once we complete them. Exile glanced along the path that led away from the indigo door that had now solidified. If that's the case, then we may still have a chance. Clay scratched his cheek as he considered the risk. Ah. We're here now, so we may as well continue. Alright, everyone. You heard what Exile said. Be on your guard, and if we come across similar areas we'll do what he suggested. Everyone agreed with Clay's assessment. There was a bit of shuffling as the party prepared to set off. Needless to say, they were feeling quite anxious. Not even Exile held out much hope that they would face the same trials. Soon after they set off, they came across a split in the passageway. Exile groaned. This meant they would have to face separate trials just like before. What will they have in store for us this time? Exile raised an eyebrow as he glanced at each passageway. There's only 4 of them. Has the tomb adjusted to the amount of players that have survived? Exile felt that they had discovered some important information. If the tombs adjusted to how many players were left inside, then would that not mean that they would be more difficult the larger the party? He could be wrong, of course. There may be challenges with better rewards if more people survived until the end. The group split up while taking one passageway each. Exile took this opportunity to spend his spare stat point in endurance. With a determined expression, he raced down the passageway, attempting to reach the end as quickly as possible. What the hell? Exile suddenly jumped to the side as a blade swung at him from out of the wall beside him. The sudden attack had taken him by surprise. As he glanced towards the wall, he noticed the arm of a lost soul had broken out of it. At the same time, he heard the sounds of the walls around him beginning to crumble. Exile gritted his teeth as he realized that he had been surrounded. He was glad that he followed his own advice, and was prepared for the unexpected. Loud groans filled the passageway as the lost souls pulled themselves out of the walls. Exile quickly counted his mind. 1. 5. 9. All in all, he counted 15 lost souls, and more were coming by the second. Exile cursed under his breath, his eyes darted from enemy to enemy as he tried to form a plan. There's no way I can fight all of them. I'm going to have to try and force my way through. I hope the others can make it past this. Exile jumped forward while bashing with his shield. The sound of bones cracking beneath the blow made him smile. He swung his axe wildly from side to side, as he kicked the enemy in front of him. His health took a dip as damage started to pile up. Exile grimaced as he used his shoulder to bash against the enemy in front of him. The lost soul tumbled over, taking a few others with it to the ground. Exile leapt over the bodies and sprinted past the new enemies that were still clamoring to escape from the walls. His heart was racing as he glanced over his shoulder. The mobs were quickly recovering and were about to give chase. Adrenaline coursed through Exile's body as he noticed a soft indigo glow coming from somewhere up ahead. Chapter 50. Lost Warrior Captain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Exile grit his teeth as he hoped the glow came from a rune that would take him to the next trial. The sounds of hurried steps came from his rear, alerting him that the mobs were closing in. Damn! They might catch up before I can make it. A hammer blow to his back launched Exile forwards. One mob had been faster than the others and now stood poised to strike a second blow. Exile rolled over as he struck the ground. He twisted his body so that his shield faced the hammer. Thud. Exile's arms vibrated as he absorbed the shock. He glared at the lost warrior that had taken him by surprise. I need to get away. Exile lashed out with a kick. A satisfying crack sound in the air. Exile grinned as the mob fell face first to the ground. He had snapped its right leg in two. Exile slammed his shield on the mob's head as he got to his feet. Although it did not kill it, he got some satisfaction out of the action. By this point, the crowd was almost upon him once again. Exile cursed under his breath. He spun on his heels and raced off. There was no way that he would wait around for them. The glow became brighter while Exile's heart pounded in his chest. An arrow flew over his shoulder, making him gasp. Up ahead, he caught sight of the indigo rune. He was mere moments away from moving on to the next trial. What will it throw at me next? Point 5 HP, Exile groaned as an arrow lodged itself in his shoulder. He frowned as he gauged the distance until he would reach the rune. I can make it. Point 5 HP, another arrow struck, landing on the back of his thigh and making stumble. Exile glanced back and instantly ducked. Whoosh! A spear tip passed through the empty air he left behind. The mobs were doing all that they could to stop him from reaching the rune. However, Exile pushed on. He grit his teeth as he watched his health plummet. The rune was almost within his reach as his health dropped to 12/65. Just a little more. Point 5 HP, Point 4 HP, soft indigo light wrapped around Exile as his finger touched the rune. As his vision went white, he could have sworn that he heard an arrow striking the wall. That was too close. Exile heaved a sigh of relief as his eyes adjusted to the new area. You have fully recovered, that was exactly the notification he had been hoping to see. Now that he was free of any danger for the time being, Al took this chance to look around. However, he did not like what he saw. In Olivia's tomb, he had faced the platoon on the bridge at this point. However, this time, there was a single enemy in the room with him. There were no ledges or anything to exploit for an easy win. Just Exile and this mob in a plain, empty marble room with indigo wisps floating around for light. With a curious gaze, Exile studied the sole enemy. It's different from the others. This one was roughly 2.5 meters tall and wielded a heavy two-handed battleaxe while Exile's height reached 195 centimeters. There was a tremendous difference between them that concerned Exile. The armor that the mob was wearing also looked to be extremely heavy. He doubted that with the difference between their height and weight, that he could gain much of an advantage. Exile readied his shield as he held his axe out to his side. He had to prepare himself to counterattack the moment that it gave him an opportunity. As soon as he stepped forward, the giant rushed towards him without warning. Damn it! Exile cursed as he braced his shield. The mob was far faster than it looked. Swoosh! Its axe sliced through the air and collided with Exile's shield. A heavy thud sounded and Exile felt his feet slide across the ground as the blow pushed him back. 0.7 HP, Exile's eyes went wide as he stared at the damage report. He had never received so much damage when blocking with his shield. The check had run the mob strength stat against his endurance. Lost warrior captain, weakened. A deep frown crossed Exile's face as he stared at the mob. A bead of sweat ran down his brow. Its strength is at 19 to do that kind of damage. So what are the rest sitting at? Exile wondered if the tomb had put him against something that he could not overcome at his current level. His eyes narrowed as he rushed in, ducking beneath the next attack that the mob threw at him. Exile slammed the edge of his shield against the enemy's thigh while slashing at the other leg with his axe. However, no damage reports revealed themselves. The lost warrior captain grinned sadistically as it kicked him full on his chest. BVEC, 0.7 HP, Exile slid back once again and grit his teeth. His health had dropped to 51 to 65 in 2 exchanges. Should I heal? No. Even if I heal, I can't damage it. So, I need to try attacking with authority. Exile pointed his axe towards the mob. Cleansing Flame is my only hope. I can only use Minor Sunder twice with my DP. So that wouldn't kill it. The edge of his axe glowed bright red as heat built up in it. A wave of hot air filled the surroundings as a stream of fire escaped from the axe's edge. The lost warrior captain disappeared from sight in the wave of flames. Your authority is greater than your enemies. Exile grinned as the notification confirmed that he was definitely dealing damage to the lost warrior captain. 10 seconds. In 10 seconds that's 100 points of damage. Please. Let it be enough. The inferno continued uninterrupted for the entire duration. Exile's eyes constantly scanned the flames for any signs of his opponent. Eventually, the spell ended. Exile held his breath as he waited to see what it would reveal when the flames vanished.